by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Like when they
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
That's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And we're back. How you doing, George?
Great. The witch is dead, somebody said in the chat. Yeah, the big untold story with Henry Kissinger is bioagents. That was his force multiplier. It was his force multiplier for the Middle East. It was his force multiplier in South America. It was his force multiplier for Israel, for the Arab oil-rich states. I mean, for stopping the Cold War invasions. He was nuclear, and everybody knew the nuclear, but the bio is the big story.
And that's the story everybody's talking about, right?
Yeah. Never. It's like Jeff Epstein.
I mean, I don't think it's in this book. Is it in this book? I don't think it is. No.
It's all nuclear. And nuclear is sort of the front end of what Kissinger's whole career with the covert stuff is all the bio.
Right, and that goes all the way back to H.G. Wells. You know, he wrote The Invisible Man, which is a story about a community that's terrorized by something they can't see. And so that's something that the elites have been working on for a long time, is trying to, because it's a great way to cow an entire, and that's another thing in War of the Worlds. Humanity was cowed by the Martians, right? And so cowing humanity seems to become this ongoing theme. And so you can do that kinetically, like that's a real obvious way that people have been doing it for thousands of years, but doing it non-kinetically, that's the key, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned H.G. Wells, and as soon as you say H.G. Wells, you start talking about romance, you got to start talking about Margaret Sanger, you got to start talking about Planned Parenthood, and when eugenics is no longer a good thing to say, right? It's after the death camps, eugenics is a nasty word. Now you say sustainability. And now you have Klaus Schwab. But it's the same program, it's just a different name.
Right. You got to put a little Bernaysian sauce on it, right?
Yeah.
Bernays sauce makes everything taste better, right?
Don't get saucy with me, Bernays. Yeah. I mean, it's just on the Klaus Schwab thing and the Kissinger Rockefeller thing. Rockefeller's sponsored Sanger, right? And it was population. Third world, the big problem. National Security Memo 200, population. David Rockefeller, every time he turned around, he talked about overpopulation. And nothing has changed. It's just the names. The only thing that's changed is the names, and Klaus Schwab's running that same program.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I'm trying to find something that I've completely blanked out.
You were probably going to my Substack and just wondering where you were going to start.
Well, I could do that, and instead of even looking for your Substack, I can just hit the George Webb Substack button that I have on my desktop here, which allows me to just do something like, "Thank you, Richard Grove, for getting me to get a George Webb button." Because there it is, and I can, and there's George Webb doing his imitation of me. Yeah, okay. So go on, George.
No, that's great. What part is imitating you?
Holding the book up like this.
Oh, holding the book up. Yeah. There you go.
Maybe I'm imitating George. I'm not
You
sure.
were so small in the picture that I couldn't
Yeah.
see you holding the book, but now I see you holding the book. Yes, good.
Are you doing this on your phone, George?
I am.
I see.
I tested the hotel internet here. It's terrible. So the radio is so much faster here, close to the airport.
So pro tip, I've done this in the past. You can use your phone as a hotspot on your laptop. Yeah,
I know. That's the unfortunate thing is the camera is also better on the phone. And then there's image jitter, whatever, stabilization.
The image stabilization on the iPhone is amazing. I shot a video. I shot those helicopters on Veterans Day that were off the coast. I had 3 Apaches and a Chinook flying over my place here in the Palisades, and I was really zoomed out. And when I looked at the video, I was amazed at the image stabilization that happened.
The quality of that was just so good. It was like right out of Apocalypse Now. I mean, the Valkyries, I could hear the music coming up in the background. It was great photography. But if you want to punch the button here and just look at some of the graphics, I think
Let me see
what I did,
get bigger here. Yeah.
What I thought I would do is, since I've been writing about Kissinger for 7 years, I just thought I would do an index or a collection. And this is just all my Kissinger stuff in there.
Okay.
Substacks. And so if you just roll through it, you can just see the various substacks they did. Call him Ishmael. That's how we keep oil in the Middle East. And also and then we talked about the Phoenix program. Kissinger was the one who was pushing that, and Colby was the guy who had to implement it. Kissinger was the guy, and then Kissinger brings it to the United States and around the world.
And what's interesting about the Phoenix program is that in reading, we all thought that it kind of started with the Nazis, but Douglas Reed takes it back to kind of Leninist Soviet Union also. It seems to be even older than the Gestapo, and it seems to be moving around. It doesn't really matter what your front ideology is. It seems to be a program that continues to like a phoenix. It starts in Russia, and then it's reborn in Germany, and then it's reborn in South Vietnam, and now it's reborn everywhere in the West, it seems.
Yeah, the Cheka, the Tsar's intelligence, and they did these trust operations, same sort of thing. Go after civilians, don't just go after, especially when there's a civil war situation. This guy wrote a book, Gardner wrote a book, he's a Yale professor, about the only video out there. They were ready for this, Peter. Everything's talking about Henry Kissinger, the statesman, and all this crap.
Right.
And this is the only guy who actually said, Democracy Now! Too. He's
even Democracy Now! Is
no. They had him on, and I met Amy Goodman once in New York, and she didn't fold. She was the person who said he's a war criminal, and a whole bunch more. It was how the biosurveillance state came into play, and he's got a new book out. I think they were called "Only the Good Die Young" is one of his books, and a new one called "The Kissinger Principle" or something like that. And I thought it was the only good analysis I could see.
One of the things I was kind of searching around for, looking for, was the he had an apologia of sorts a few days ago, where he was talking about how letting all of these people over the borders in all of these Western countries is a big mistake, and it reminds me of in the retelling of the creation of Israel. Reed points out that Theodore Herzl, when he took the Uganda proposal to the Sanhedrin, was kind of like drummed out at the last minute, kind of like he had been running with the football, his entire career. And at the end, they said, no, we don't want Uganda. And they threw him out. And then likewise, Chaim Weizmann, after the state of Israel had been created, he started kind of backing off on anything that he saw as a terrorist or untowardly violent, and they kind of threw him under the bus too. And so it's interesting that there seems to be this pattern of in the 11th hour, in the 11th minute, and the 11th second, people jumping up and saying, "Oh, my legacy! I better say something nice before I go." It seems to be interesting.
Yeah, Kissinger certainly didn't apologize until the end, and made no noises about that until right until the end. And here's a guy who used population and population movement to do overthrows and to vector super spreading. I mean, you just the last person in the world who should, it's like him winning the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, it's like Bob Malone representing veterans getting that have had anthrax injury.
Yep.
That's about as much medical cross-dressing, right, as Kissinger getting the Nobel Peace Prize, right? I mean, it happened. So I guess it could happen again.
So do you want to change? You want to change the subject to Bob Malone, or do you want to keep going with it? You want to keep going through Henry Kissinger's greatest hits?
Well, yeah, I'm just saying there's the receipts here, right? This is him saying we need to push more aggressively on the Phoenix program to Bill Colby. Right. These are the receipts, and I just kind of blow through the receipts and just show everybody that the receipts are there, all signed, sealed, delivered. The documents are there. And I go through all of the various things that Kissinger was involved in. So this is the cancer center at Frederick, Maryland, when he goes up to set up the Nixon to go shut down offensive bioweapons. Nixon ropes off 71 acres and starts the National Cancer Center there and runs the offensive weapon development out of the cancer center there at Frederick.
It's all about changing names. Yeah. And then what's this?
These are just some shots. Anthony Bourdain was quoted in Only the Good Die Young, about Kissinger and Timor, but Bangladesh.
I have a video of Anthony Bourdain I could play, I think.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think everybody loves Anthony Bourdain.
Here we go. And it's not your usual Anthony Bourdain
It'll
video.
make you hungry.
Yeah. Right, here it is. So let me share this tab instead. And let me make sure my audio is set correctly, and it's not. So I checked that. All right. And let's
Henry Kissinger walks into a bar. It sounds like a joke. Henry Kissinger and a penguin walk into a bar. I'm not asking what you do, but what would it displease you if I walked over and punched Henry Kissinger in the face? Would you find that entertaining? Would you have a frisson of pleasure even? Would you feel that justice is in some small way served?
You hate Henry Kissinger.
I fucking hate him.
Yeah.
Because in my travels, I stumble across his good works everywhere I go.
Right. Let's do this.
A rabbit punch.
No kidney punch.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
so
And he dies young. So
exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, Kissinger never forgot and never forgave. He just didn't get his revenge right away. But I basically go through all the programs, and that's one of the points that Gardner makes at Yale is he touched everything, and for a long period of time, for 70 years, and not just touched, but he had his hands involved. I mean, this goes back to Dr. Strangelove with Herman Kahn at the Rand Institute and Sam Cohen developing the neutron weapon. I mean, he had his fingers in every pie there was.
So one of the points that you were making, I was listening to one of your Twitter spaces today, George, and one of the points that you were making is that Henry liked to keep a lot of stuff close to his own personal vest. That even though you got KK&R and you got all these, associates, Kissinger and associates, that Henry liked to keep a lot of stuff close. And usually in that case, when somebody passes away, you wind up having some kind of a King Lear situation, where all of the people who each are responsible for a piece of the kingdom go to war with the other pieces of the kingdom. Do you see anything like that showing up? And who do you think the players would be in a scenario like that? I'm just
Yeah.
making this up, folks.
No, I think
Yeah.
the King Lear thing, or Alexander the Great, same thing happened after he died. You've already had Bob Cadillac and Malone go at each other. Cadillac already did the apologia. Hey, I'm sorry I covered up the Wuhan leak. Why is he apologizing for covering up the Wuhan leak? He wants you to think it was a leak and not live exercise. It's sort of like pleading guilty to jaywalking if you're or if you're one of the shooters in Dallas.
Right.
Please take me away for jaywalking, and forget that rifle over there, that Mauser, right? And so that's kind of what. So Cadillac's already coming out. DTARA is 1998 anthrax spinoff for the CIA. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it was 75 infectious diseases, but at the end of the day, it's the countermeasures for 75 different things at Fort Detrick, right?
Shield and the sword.
The shield and the sword, exactly. And so Cadillac is trying to push himself away from DTRA. Bob Malone's trying to push himself away from DTRA. Bob Malone's trying to say, I hate Kissinger. Bob Malone's trying to say, oh, Kissinger and Klaus Schwab, that was a protege-mentee relationship, right? And then on Bannon yesterday, Bob Malone already jumped out and was kind of attacking Cadillac. And that's the guy who gave him the POs for the domain program in January 2020. I mean, it's like I say, this is all Kissinger Peace Prize worthy irony here.
Interesting. So I again, I don't want to go too much out on a limb right now, and I don't want to set people's expectations in an unnecessary way. But I do have this feeling that with Henry gone, like a bunch of things are going, a bunch of unexpected things may happen, and not all good, by the way. But it seems like he was probably holding a lot of people down who are going to suddenly pop up and try to grab their brass ring.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. And I think and Klaus is a very clumsy Kissinger. He's not as good as Kissinger, and he can't manage the chessboards in his head like, Henry Kissinger play 100 simultaneous blindfold chess games and win them all, right?
Well, but Henry was playing for the winning side at the end of World War II. So
right.
he had that kind of like, I've got the Dulles brothers behind me kind of gravitas. I've got the Rockefellers behind me. It's like.
But I think Klaus has the Rockefellers behind him because of the legacy with Kissinger. And I think he's also got the Rothschilds behind him as well. And I think he's much clumsier, and he thinks about the ramifications much less. So a Great Reset 2 here with using Peter Hotez as the front man and H5N1, from Erasmus Lab. Hey, no problem. Let's run it. Doesn't that get us quicker to the agenda, the sustainability agenda? Let's do it, and we've got now in Ohio this weird pneumonia from China, so which is going to be anthrax, just letting you know.
Yeah, we all have to go get our anthrax tests. There we go. So Schwab Me No More is the next thing on your Substack.
I paired those guys together in 2021, and I just did it. And Bob Malone's out there today, now that Kissinger's dead, and he's not afraid of the Anthony Bourdain effect. Now he's saying what a bad guy he is. So I just go through all the books I wrote about Kissinger, and then I moved them all over to Substack, and I added a lot of graphics. And this is just like an index or a collection or a playlist of all the Kissinger stuff if you want to go through.
Is this Kolomoisky?
Yeah, well, I talk about Kissinger's connection to the mega group, and I talk about how at the State Department, the CIA had to move bioweapons out of the State Department. Well, they could still run it under State Department, but the State Department talks to foreign countries, right? So if you're going to move the anthrax program, let's say, out of Fort Detrick, you've got to have another country you're dealing with. And the country was Israel. And the State Department planes and tail numbers and so forth. I mean, basically, they moved this program, the Bioagents, to Israel. Danny Rothschild, Avi Braverman, et cetera. So that's where the mega group is really involved. And so each of these things, I mean, Kissinger is a very complex topic with a lot of different fingers. Like I said, here's the paperclip. He used this Harvard International Seminar, to get Klaus Schwab and recruit Klaus Schwab. And every year they would say, well, which paper clippers do you want to bring over this year? And, it was the Harvard International Seminar before he became the Secretary of State.
Right. And it's very interesting going back to that Witness Tree book. My wife has been reading. She spends all of her spare time reading that book, George.
Okay.
Just the whole idea that nationhood for Israel was traded in exchange for looking the other way for the right paperclip Nazis. It's an interesting premise in that book.
Yeah, that book what you read with Richard Grove skates on the blackmail side and compromise, but there's also the money from the MICE, the mice, and I think it's the Rockefeller money, and along with Rockefeller's interdevelopment bank that got involved in that, and then the people who get Zemurray, Zemurray,
right,
who became the head of United Fruit, is the guy who gets the most credit for going around and bribing. At least this is the story that they tell at the Zion Center, that they went around and bribed all the 15 countries of Latin America, and that's how they got 15 votes. I think Honduras abstained.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm just saying, I love the fictional treatments, the historical fiction, because it gets you really to think about the possibilities of the two Mossad agents, compromising him.
Well, I started to read the book last night. I went for a walk, and I got the Kindle version, and I have it, my iPhone reading it to me while I was walking to the store last night. And in the first chapter of the book, the three Dulles kids, Alan, Stephen, and Eleanor, are all blackmailing each other. Foster, Alan, and Eleanor are all they're kids. They're 14 or 15 years old. They're literally blackmailing each other in the first chapter of the book. It's kind of funny.
She's an interesting character. They called her the mother of West Berlin. Yeah, there's the Zemurray article about United Fruit. And of course that was Alan Dulles and the Sullivan and Cromwell. But this goes into World War II. Nelson Rockefeller is running inter-American affairs. During World War II, the Rockefellers used Panamanian oil tankers to get Hitler his fuel and many other products, lubricants, etc. Right, and then it goes right into after World War II until John Foster Dulles dies in '59, and then they create Then they have to have a front bank, so they create the Inter-American Bank. But unbroken chain of Rockefellers in Central America with Dulles, absolutely.
Right, and Dulles and Dulles is their attorney, right? When he's not doing the State Department stuff, he's Sullivan and Cromwell are the attorneys for the Rockefellers in South America. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I like, Eleanor Dulles is an interesting character, and she's not really gotten much treatment. So for the witness, what is it called? The witness list?
The witness tree.
The witness tree. I think that's really interesting because she had a lot to do with East Germany, West Germany. There was a lot of intrigue going into the underground Zionist movement, I think, in the book. Haganah, Shin Bet, and all that in the early days of the formation of Israel. I don't know the author that you told me before the show, but I know the other guy, John Lofton. I've read his book, The Secret War Against Jews, and I've also read his other book about paperclip. So he wrote a big book on paperclip, and he identified where the Q files were. They had stored all of the paperclip Nazis documentation in the back under nuclear, the highest level of clearance, misfiled.
Yeah, misfiling things is the way that they do things. They put stuff in the National Archive and they change a letter or something, and then somebody. But again, we've talked about this earlier on the show. I want to know who the person is at the National Archives. Is it Nellie Orr's son this week? Who knows where all of the bodies are buried, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the two authors are Brendan Howley and John J. Loftus. And my producer says, good luck finding any Brendan Howley books, because she's been looking.
Yeah. Well, I think it's sort of like Doug Valentine when he wrote TDY. He had all the receipts for for the Phoenix program, and so that was a factual book. But when he wrote TDY, he chose to go over the fiction line because he didn't want to get into speculation, right? Because it was speculative history, right? So I think that's a good device, and I think I think she's a very interesting person. Stephen Kinzer wrote The Brothers about John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles, and that was a great book because a lot of people didn't realize the CIA just moved all the stuff into the State Department that they wanted to hide from Eisenhower and Truman. But this Eleanor is kind of the unwritten, unknown Dulles, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Richard said on that video, which you can watch if you go to the Witness 3 book on the Duke Report, you can watch Richard Grove's reveal of this book. He said that he got this book because somebody sent it to him. Like, he had never heard of this book, and he said it's the only novel he's read in 15 years. So George, we can add The Last Nazi onto the two novels that we've read in the last 15 years.
Well, like I say, when you do like a Michener type fiction, which is laced with just all this research and fact finding and so forth, it makes it better than having to watch a documentary because it has a flow to it and a plot to it. And
well, the medium is the message. I mean, just a sidebar. I have the paperback version of my conspiracy book done. I've got the hardback version of it done. I'm finishing the ebook version of it. It will be available on the 11th of January. And what was the title that we finally agreed on? Which I'm spacing the title because I've renamed it like a dozen times in the last. The title of the book is Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy. That's the current title.
I love it. That's a good title.
Yeah, I went through a lot of iterations with AI, trying to figure out something that's search engine optimized, something that talks specifically about the subject. And I wanted to come up with something that was catchy. So Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy. And the subtitle is Using AI to Understand the Puppet Masters.
Good title.
So that will all be available on the 11th. Kindle, assuming that I get approved, right?
You mean as soon as a publisher picks you up, or you mean you're?
No, I've gone with the George Webb recommendation, and I'm going with Amazon Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be available hardback, paperback, and Kindle.
It sounds like a sellout, but it's not, because what if somebody wants that book in France?
It's available. It'll be available in every country in the world.
Right. And it's just like, it's shipping it there and everything. It was so expensive. And Amazon's got that nailed, and they got 95% of the market. There's no 99% of the market. There's no arguing, So,
right.
Yeah.
So, and half of the first chapter is about how the protocols of Zion are plagiarized, and fake, according to the United States Congress. Melissa's mind says, "Wow." Anyway, back to Kissinger.
Well, let me just read a little of this Eleanor Dulles now that we're on the witness list, so that we introduce the character, because I think this will be one of these running things where we're going to keep going back to the witness list. But in 1936, this is Eleanor Dulles, entered government service. Her first position was the Social Security Board. In 1942, she transferred to the Board of Economic Warfare, right? And that's, so she was a diplomat. 42, she joined the State Department, had a short stint at Commerce, and then 20 years as the economic officer of the Division of Post-War Planning. That's a big, that's a big job. She was 3 years at the State Department. Dulles was involved in, she helped determine U.S. position on international financial cooperation at the Bretton Woods Conference. Hello. Well,
yeah, I mean, this is one of the points that Reed makes in his book, is that the bright, shiny object in a war is always like the hardware and the explosions and the battles and the heroes and all of those stories. But all of the real change that actually happens in the world usually happens in the last 6 months of the war, and then everything that happens in the 18 months after the war. That's where everything in the war happens. And everybody's attention is on the parades and the heroes coming home and the medals and all the other stuff. But they don't pay any attention to the people smoking cigars in dark rooms, who are redrawing maps and putting governments in and sending the right people in and getting rid of the wrong people. All of those things happen kind of behind the scenes, and they happen within 18 months of the end of the war.
Yeah, fast. She was, speaking of the Marshall Plan, she was the head of the Bank of International Reconstruction and Development. So she was a part of that. She then went to do reconstruction for the Austrian economy. She ran the German-Austrian division. She took an active interest in Berlin and became the informal Berlin lobby, because at one point they were talking about, since Berlin was in the Russian sector, of giving Berlin over to the Russians, and there was another group said, over our dead body is Berlin gonna go to the Russians. And so that is just a very interesting person. In 1959, she transferred to the Bureau of Intelligence and Research. She traveled extensively to Africa, Latin America, South Asia, under Secretary Dean Rusk, Secretary of State, which was Kennedy's man at Secretary of State. She requested her resignation on September 21st because of the Bay of Pigs invasion, because of Kennedy felt that maybe she was a spy. So this is right into the McDuff stuff. So this is a really unspoken.
Well, she was related to the CIA director.
Yeah, the longest serving one, and also the longest serving Secretary of State. So, and plus, she had a Secretary of State somewhere in her lineage, going all the way back to Benjamin Harrison. I think the Dulles has had like 2 or 3 previous Secretaries of State in their lineage.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So that family is, it's the F that they leave off of. The CIA leaves off of mice. So money, ideology, compromise or coercion, ego, and then they always just forget F, family, because it's all in the family. And in fact, in a lot of the books about the global conspiracy that runs the world, they internally refer to their organization as the family.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and the company I've heard as well, but theirs certainly was the family. Yeah, this is an amazing story. I'm looking for.
Yeah, Deborah Johnson wants to know: would McDuff have known Kissinger?
I saw Kissinger through a window, but he was with the 2 pilots, and the one pilot, Hal, not my father-in-law, but the other pilot, went out and talked to him for a while. And they were there to invest in a factory. It was the old Skoda works, and then there was a factory in Hungary as well. And to their surprise, Kissinger was not that interested in the Czechs after the fall of the Velvet Revolution. So we're making cars. He wanted them to make weapons. And that was the big eye opener.
They always made really good weapons.
Yeah, that was the big eye opener when I was on that trip when I was, 29, 30 years old. So I did see him through a window. He was everywhere. I would imagine that McDuff working directly for Dean Rusk on the Cuba committee and Bobby Kennedy Jr. I mean, I would imagine they ran into each other. I mean, Rusk would have been the heavy hitter, and Henry Kissinger is over at Harvard running the, the international committee. And now he might have run into Kissinger when he went to Harvard Law after the war, maybe. I don't know.
We don't know. Let's see. I'm just jumping back to your story, your Substack here, George.
Well, I think these letters are interesting. They're showing how they're kind of doing an outreach for the International Committee every year, saying, who are you recommending to bring into the country? How did you feel the last batch worked out? So it was a continuous process that he was bringing these
Right.
Nazi scientists in.
And this is a month after Kennedy's assassinated, I see. December 23rd, 1963.
Yeah, doors open again. And then I just go through some of the other books that I've written. Deep State Made, I think this is the graphic for Deep State Made. And this is the one I did for Coronathrax, saying the way to do this is to have pneumonia-like symptoms, but don't have it be pneumonia, because then people won't know how to treat it. And they'll say whatever the new novel thing is, they'll take that test strip and use that and not treat it with antibiotics. It's always going to be antibiotics that ends up saving you, right? Or some off-the-shelf hydroxychloroquine, but they're going to try to breadcrumb you away from that. This is the Agomania book that we did. So I just put and there's 5 or 6 that I haven't even put out there yet. I've written a lot about Kissinger. This is when they found oil in Western Pennsylvania, the Rockefellers bought a thing called Talleyrand. They built a house out there near Windber, Pennsylvania. And John D. Rockefeller's place to talk about oil fields in Western Pennsylvania was this place near where the current sort of Rockefeller Cancer Center is out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. And what's this? Declassified DTRA and DARPA documents.
Yeah, well, that's what I was in. The last 7 days, I called these the Kissinger days. I didn't know he was going to die at the end of my Kissinger days, but I was trying to say we have to take these Kissinger creations of DARPA, which I say is created with a mass formation psychosis, just like DTRA is created for the anthrax vaccine. But Sputnik is 57, creates this national psychosis so that we create NASA and DARPA because the Russians are ahead of us. We're not doing enough to pool our scientific resources, so we create DARPA.
Oh my goodness, they have the high ground. We have to do something.
Literally the high ground. Yeah. And then that's Space and Defense Command is also there in that mountainside. And Rockefellers we always felt that was their retreat if there was a nuclear war from New York, is they're going to go out there.
Well, there was something that I read once, and I don't remember exactly where I read it, that the Rockefellers didn't really see nuclear war as too much of a problem because they had their personal bunkers all squared away and they were ready for it in case it came. And so
Windber would be a good one, and a hospital right above you.
Right.
So yeah, and no cars in the parking lot, 200 doctors, and no patients.
That's it.
Dr. Strangelove, So.
That's a curious thing. All right, let me go look at some questions here. We got a couple.
Sure.
Let me see. Hamish 62 says, you must, do I must? I immediately think when I see you must that I must not mean a different congressional session than the one which just passed almost unanimously, save for Massey and Tlaib, a resolution condemning anti-Zionism, Peter. Must I? I don't even pay attention to Congress. I don't think it's real. The title of my book is The Illusion of Democracy. Okay. Like, I'm not paying attention. Literally, I'm just not paying attention. So if you're watching TV and you're paying attention to that stuff, then maybe you should read a book. That's my
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of probably, yeah, their votes. And then they have the controlled opposition, so that congresswoman gets money too, their various, I can't remember her name, but Tlaib is the other one that, now you can send money to the Muslims too and hate Israel. So you collect money on both angles. It goes, same Nancy Pelosi fund it goes into. So like you say, the best thing to do is ignore Congress.
What was the honeypot that you showed me right before we went on?
Unjected.
Unjected. Oh yeah, there's a new website, Unjected, which is they're running ads. It's like Tinder for people who are not injected. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's a list I want to jump on. I'm going to send my name in there. I'll give them my name, my address, my phone number. I might give them a check. Oh, it's free for women. Oh, it's free for women. Just put yourself on a list there.
Well, that's that's a strange affinity marketing, but whatever. I guess that's important to some people, I'm sure.
Well, but no, but that's the point. It's like everything becomes a honeypot at a certain point, right?
Do people think that somehow it's going to rub off? If they dated somebody who had been vaccinated, that somehow there'll be a transfer of skin penetrating nanoparticles or something worse? Is there some kind of strange Lovian thing? That maybe so. Maybe somehow like the baby would be, if you had kids, would be whacked up.
Well, I don't know. I guess it appeals to people's. So we all have a fear mechanism, right? We hear something and we, our fight or flight or whatever it is kicks in and we think, oh, what am I going to do? It's like prepping. Like I'm a very prepped out person. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably a 7 or an 8, but a lot of that prepping mentality is just giving into kind of the fear component of it, right? Like I know how light you live, George. You basically live out of a backpack. You're not much of a prepper.
No.
Right? No. Your prepping is your ability to move as quickly as possible. And
yes.
And that may wind up being the number one survival skill moving forward of all time. And so anybody who's got a big investment in being prepped usually means they've got a bunch of stuff, and they may have a go bag, they may have a backpack that's filled with stuff and they're ready to run out the door. But usually it means that they put a lot of mental effort, time, energy, resources into thinking about what happens if stuff all goes wrong, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't think that way, because I think there's a certain amount of it it's like buying insurance, right? You think that way, but if you get too obsessed with it, if it starts to kind of control your behavior, whether or not you decide that you're going to go into town after 5 o'clock because statistics say something bad could happen to you, then you're letting the fear control you, and that's probably not a good thing. And I'll bring this back to what's it called? Unjected. I was going to type in unjected.com and see if I could find this. Unjected. Unjected.org. I'm looking. No, it's not. But she'll find it and send me a link. If you give it, there is a way to raise money on anything that people are afraid of. You can sell gold, you can sell Bitcoin, you can sell NFTs, you can sell survival food, and she's sending me a link. All right. The thing is about all of this stuff is that if the elites have total control over these things, here we go. Share this tab. Here we go. They decide whether or not we're on the gold standard or not the gold standard. People are saying buy gold. It's a safe haven. People had a lot of gold when FDR got elected and he made gold illegal. So people are saying buy Bitcoin. The government can't shut it down. The government owns the internet. Bitcoin runs on the internet. The government can do whatever the government wants. People are saying, this person has the euro. Somebody sent me a link the other day to something called the euro dollar. It's a monetary system the government can't shut down. That's not true. Anybody who's got a monopoly on violence can do whatever they damn well please. So FDR did say one thing though that I think is legit, which is that the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself. And I do believe that that's I do believe that if you understand what that means, is that the fear that George calls it mass, what do you call it? Your mass delusion, mass formation psychosis. I call it trauma-based mind control. If you let the trauma-based mind control affect your behavior longer than it takes you to realize that your behavior is being affected by it, then there's an issue. So Unjected, the world's first platform for unvaccinated and completely free for women. So yeah, go sign up, put your name on a list. There's no way that the NSA will ever leak this information to the National Institute of Health or DARPA or anybody else that lets them know that you're on the naughty list because you didn't go get your boop boop.
Yeah. Well, this sort of affinity marketing, if you will, you're exactly right. They sell this data to the government, and this is a form of a check mark against you. It's part of a mosaic against you. It's not the whole thing, I'm sure. But if you feel strong enough about this, you're not going to be a part of the government program, then you're going to go into the, low intensity warfare mode against.
I wonder if they're using Salesforce or Palantir to track everybody in the back here.
Probably some kind of
I'm joking.
Python database that's free. All these startups, they have to use everything is free. But.
So yeah, the courage to face COVID-19, Unjected. Oh wait, they got a commercial here. Should we watch the commercial?
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
Aloha, my name is Shelby, and I am the founder of the world's first unvaccinated platform, Unjected. It was in the spring of.
Okay, so this is the what's her name?
So
the black girl on the Daily Wire, Candace Owens. This was Candace Owens' entree into the media sphere, was that she launched an app that was called Social Autopsy, that was going to identify all of the wrong think on social media. So here we go.
21, when we saw our families and friends line up to get vaccinated, we felt ostracized and alone for our beliefs to remain unvaccinated. And I wanted to give people a place to connect and feel safe to have partners or friends or business relationships with like-minded people who respect your medical freedom. Unjected is a platform for critical thinkers, for people who refuse to have the mRNA vaccine. It's for dating, community connections, and we even have directories for fertility and even blood match services.
Critical thinkers.
And I think you got an overtone there at the end with the blood matching and so forth, where something's happening to the blood here if you got vaccinated. That's like the invisible man here. There's a fear there somehow that blood matching. Why would that be important? Unless there's something in the vax that's getting into the blood, right? And then it's going to infect you, right? And what was the other one that she said other than blood matching? She said
let me jump to the end. I have to be honest though. I was slightly distracted by the blue eyeshadow and the magenta chair with the green and white checked pillow, like all of that stuff. There's all this noise going on visually, which for a person like me who's kind of obsessive about visualization, it bugs me a little bit. All right, I'll jump to the end here.
For people who refuse to have the mRNA vaccine.
It
is a platform for critical thinkers, for people who refuse to have the mRNA vaccine. It's for dating, community connections, and we even have directories for fertility and even blood match services.
Blood match services. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
I get fertility. I get, if you're dating, want to know the other person's capable if you're interested in having a child. But the blood matching is interesting. I'm type A. What are you? B? Oh, get away from me. Like somehow I don't know. It seems an irrational fear, but okay.
Right. And just to be clear, I believe that the key to all of this stuff is critical thinking. I believe that asking questions, what we try to do on this show is ask questions. Like what are the questions that people need to be asking? And we don't necessarily want to ask the questions and then prefabricate, and then synthesize and give you the answer, because then you're just turning the channel on the TV. You're going from Fox to CNN to Richard Grove to Jay Dyer to Robert Seffer to George Webb to see like who's got a story that I believe in, so that I don't actually have to think today. We don't like that. We like people who critically think. But using an online website right now in order to network with people in an activity that might be judged by the state 6 months from now or 18 months from now to be counterproductive for the state, it's probably not a good idea. I think that it might be better to go meet people in your own town at a coffee shop, or the way that we used to do it, as opposed to putting all your deets into the big information machine, and then hoping, lighting a candle and praying that nothing bad happens to you. I'm not sold.
I wonder if there's a dating site for people who've gotten billions and billions of dollars to develop vaccines, including for anthrax, and have recommended children get anthrax, for them to represent.
Well, there is, but in that case, you're in that dating site is run by the parents of those people, and they decide who's going to marry who. That's how that works. Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
And first cousins are problematic. So sometimes you got to spin a first cousin off into an adoption situation so that it doesn't look like you're marrying your first cousin. Didn't they
try that? Didn't Dalton and what was the?
I think there's a long history of that. Frankly, if you dig into the kind of, it's part of the reason why genealogies wind up becoming so curious and interesting, and why you get Habsburg chins.
Well, there was 4 families of Wedgwoods and a couple of other ones. I think it was Huxley's maybe and somebody else, but they had this experiment where they only were going to interbreed between the 4 families. And they said they would have this incredible generation, superwomen, in only 2 generations, maybe 3 at the most. But in 2 generations, they all had every kind of thing that you could possibly go wrong.
That's why I've always had mutts when I get dogs.
Yeah,
because they don't get sick that often. They don't have that many problems.
And that's good for plants too when they cross them, and they don't make them too. One thing, the hybridization is a good thing because it brings the various characteristics together. So I'm all for mix and match. Just keep it all in one suit didn't work too well for the kings and queens of Europe.
It doesn't. Which it brings me to the genetics of the world conspiracy, the idea that all people from a certain bloodline need to intermarry in order. It doesn't work out that well in a biological way, and so how they think that that's a good idea in the long term, I don't really understand. But I do remember a Saturday Night Live routine once, though, when Princess Diana was pregnant. And the actress, there was an actress who was playing Princess Diana, and a reporter asked her if she wants a boy or a girl, and she says, "Oh, I don't care, anything with a chin."
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I was down on Charles for a long time, and then I heard him read Under Milkwood by Dylan Thomas and for the BBC, and then I actually he has such a beautiful voice, he really does, and his delivery was just absolutely fantastic. So she has to get over it. You can't have the prominent chin and the perfect narrator for Dylan Thomas. That's not going to happen in the same guy. Come on.
She married him. That's all I can say. She married him. All right. I have 3 comments. I don't know if any of these things are questions. Hamish62 said, that's straight from X, Peter. And I was being a bit sardonic with capitalizing must. Again, I guess I don't have the context, so I'm not understanding it. And I apologize for not understanding it. And Hamish62 also said, rather than anti. Yeah, again, these comments are out of context, so I don't know what I don't know what they mean.
I would make one comment here. It is a programmed reaction. It is the classic.
Which is a programmed reaction?
Anti-Semitism, and you're seeing 388% increase in the anti-Semitic thing, blah 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 blah, and Bobby Kennedy and all this stuff. It is a programmed reaction. You're going to do the invasion first, with all the bombing, and do all that, and then make yourself the victim. That always has to be the thing. Now, I'm pro-Israel, but I'm not that pro-Israel. I think it could have been worked out. You could have put the Ben Gurion Canal in there and said, hey, you kids who don't have jobs and you're just building slingshots, and carbon.
And gee whiz, that real estate that you have is really valuable. Could we pay you for it?
And let's go into a joint venture.
Let's make a JV. Right, yeah.
It could have been worked out. It could have been worked out easily with the new oil find and the new gas find. But they didn't. They wanted it all for themselves. And they don't want, and ever since the original infiltration, I mean, when the organizations, the Zionist organizations were underground, the always end goal was homeland, homogeneous homeland. No Palestinians here. And we should just say that's what it is.
Right. Well, it says it in Deuteronomy. It says it right
but it
there.
says that when Avi Braverman's talking to Danny Rothschild too, and saying how are we going to do it, and they say, well, we're going to need an anthrax, and we're going to need a damn vaccine.
Right.
So if we're going to keep all the oil, we're going to have the royal family is going to have a vaccine that works. And so far, Malone hasn't delivered us a damn vaccine that works. And the royal family dies right along with everybody else, and that ain't working.
Yeah, I'm on the Rodney King side. Can't we just all get along? It's it would be nice. It would be nice if we could do that. And as Taylor Swift said, this is why we can't have nice things. But
well, you mentioned some of the big guys, Chaim Weitzman and
Theodore Herzl
and all these guys. That never was in the plan. That was always, take back the land that we got from Moses. So.
Right, and it's way older than World War II. I was bringing up this. Do I have it here? The Henry Monk book, who was talking to Lincoln about it, and Richard Grove was going back 30 years before the Civil War. He had a reference to somebody talking about it 30 years before the Civil War. So it's a meme that's been going on for a long time. And it would be nice to get to the bottom of it, though. It would be nice to, have a little clarity about what's actually really going on, because when you start to dig into the conspiracy theories, and you start, if you take a look at my book on the 11th, which is called what's the name of it? The Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy. If you take a look at that book and then you just compare it to the world events that have happened, since 1905, or you can go back and kind of project it into, the communist revolutions of 1848 or the French Revolution. These things continually happen over and over and over again, and the media, which is owned by people who are controlling it, continue to tell us these kind of fairy stories, school plays, as George Webb would say, in order to be able to make sense out of these things. They're not disconnected. They're not unconnected. And if you take a look at them, you'll figure that out. All right, we have a couple more, and then we can get out of here. All right, so AI aired. As fertility is being jeopardized, does blood matching become an important aspect of pairing? Asking.
I don't think so.
Only if it has negative effects. It's like I have cystic fibrosis I have a cystic fibrosis gene. And if I had a child with somebody else who also had the cystic fibrosis gene, there's 100% chance that my kid would have had cystic fibrosis. So I think that's a good thing. They should tell you that, though, before you're pregnant. That's something that I got to tell you, in between taking that test and then finding out the results that my child was negative, that was a very stressful, 48 hours, and they should tell you those things before you get pregnant.
That's just genetic screening. I mean, I don't consider that blood matching. I mean,
yeah.
An A person going and dating a person who with B is just as safe as A and A or A and O.
Right.
So unless you're like anti-European and you want to go with American Indian and you want to go all the way, then I guess for that reason, political reasons or something, you could. But that's the only thing I can see blood matching ever being a part of the discussion. That's really interesting, actually. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's well, you can go to you can go to Unjected and find out.
I went to Unjected. I thought I
you bookmarked it.
Well, maybe Bob, maybe the people who got injured with vaccines might want to unject their hero because he's the one who put the anthrax in your blood. Now, I would be much more worried about Bob Malone's anthrax vaccines from Dyneport than I would be if your lover has a different blood type than you.
Yeah, it's curiouser and curiouser thing. People are, but here's the good news. The good news, is that people are asking questions. Now, jumping to conclusions is not a good thing. But asking questions and being the type of person who, instead of immediately says that's cool, immediately says, is that cool? Is probably where we want to be. So I think that's
maybe a good website for veterans who had the 6 shots or the Dyneport. Bobjected. I was Bobjected. So, yeah.
Right. Dalmatian Plantation asked me if I've ever heard of fresh411.com. Yeah, and I have a link to the private chat, and it's right here. And no, I haven't heard of it. I don't know what it is. I can go look at it. It says digital marketing, prompt engineer, SEO, paid advertising, social media, creative analytics, blah, 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 blah. So here's the thing about AI, and George will remember this, is that I've been around the block long enough that when the World Wide Web was invented in 1992 when Mark Andreessen and the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana released the Mosaic browser, and combined with this thing called an Apache web server, you could build this thing called a website. There were these guys, Jerry Yang and Philo at Stanford, who built Yahoo, which was a directory of all of the websites on the internet. And about 90% of those websites on the internet were about how to build a website. Because the number one thing that people on the internet wanted to know was how to build a website. And today, if you try to find a website that's on how to build a website, it'll probably, if you type how to build a website, it'll probably take you to WordPress.com or something like that. Squarespace, there, something like that. And so AI is like that right now. We're at the very cusp of AI. So this guy that is a contributor to Jimmy Dore, Pasta, I'm trying to remember it. His nickname is Pasta. He was on Richard Grove's show the other night, and he was talking about launching a new channel. And the thing that was keeping him from moving forward was that he didn't have a logo. And I fired up DALL-E and ChatGPT, and in about 2 or 3 minutes, I came up with 16 different logo styles for him.
I know Pasta. I call him Pasta Pasta.
Yeah.
And he loves Italian food, and he lives down here.
Right.
He lives in Miami. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so I came up with he said that he used to be a radical and he was a lefty, and I came up with a logo that was a clenched fist, like a communist fist that was holding spaghetti.
That's good.
But my wife thought, why not just a bowl of pasta running? Because it's the site is pasta to go. And so I just typed in the prompt. I'm good at prompts. I understand how the prompt logic works.
I like them.
And I came up with, and so he texted me right before the show. And so after the show, I'm gonna send him the renders that I came up with. But that
really nice guy, really super nice person.
And you know what, he does the Lord's work. And if this was a great way for me to network and introduce myself to him and say, hey, how you doing? Here's a logo. Because guess what? It took me about 30 seconds it actually took me more like 7 or 8 minutes. And, but it took me 30 years of experience to know what to type in. But the AI thing is so scary now. To be able to create a brand in 4 or 5 minutes it should be frightening the crap out of advertising agencies. So when I see innovative AI marketing solutions, I think, well, I could do this. I mean, I did write a book using AI, and I put it right in the title. The subtitle on my book is "Using AI to Understand the Puppet Masters." So I'm not hiding. And two of the questions that Amazon asks you now when you post a book is like, did you use AI to make any of the graphics in this book? And it says, did you use AI to make any of the content in this book? So they're asking you up front. And it says, I put it right on the front that I'm using AI. And in the description of the book, it describes how I used AI. But and as I was doing this, my wife looked at me and she goes, this could be a new category of book. Going through and taking original documents and then running it through this AI filter in order to bring it up to vernacular or reduce the amount of expertise that somebody has, domain understanding that somebody has in order to be able to explain a complicated concept to somebody. That's a really powerful thing. And, there's entire industries of companies that have made like, building a website for dummies, the For Dummies thing. Like GPT takes anything and makes it for dummies. You can take any, George is it SciDoc, the one that you were using the other day, George?
SciSpace.
SciSpace, yeah. SciSpace, you open up a scientific paper and you start asking it to explain it to you in English.
And being able to just mark some text like you would for make a different font change and have it explain that sentence to you if it's jargon rather than the whole paper, so you can target what the missing pieces that you don't understand. That's really powerful. And then it prompts you with a follow-up question. So, and the same thing with graphs. If you don't understand the graph, so I think this whole synthesis economy. I mean, we've created a lot of stuff. I got 5,000 videos out there and 50 books and 100 subtexts. The synthesis and resynthesizing it, making it the graphics better, the footnoting better, the words better. That's a whole new career for me.
Right.
And
there was like I said, I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago on Zoom of one of the followers of the show who is taking an old PDF book and turning it into a really accessible EPUB version of it, just so that researchers have the ability to go look at it. There's so many books that were published before the internet, before EPUB was a format, and PDF was a format. And so people were scanning books and they were creating PDFs. But a lot of these books, the witness tree is out of print. The cheapest copy of that book, you can get it on Kindle for $6, but but to get a paper version of it is the cheapest one that we found was $150 or $160, and it was a 2009 book. So this isn't a pre-internet. This isn't a pre-EPUB book. So then you have to ask yourself the question: why is it so hard to get? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know that when you publish books, you leave trails, right? You leave a trail of people and contracts and relationships behind you. And maybe if you do one printing and you throw it out in the world. Richard Grove said that he became aware of the book because somebody sent it to him in the mail. He had never heard of the book before. So,
well, maybe we'll play a little bit next time, next show.
All right, very good. Let me just see. E. Carmadoc said, George, I sent you a snapshot of the rules suspended by CMS. I don't know what that is.
The CMS is the system for Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement for doctors. And so if you're on the CMS, that means you get reimbursed. If you're not, you don't. So the customer has to pay cash, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so apparently, I think what she's talking about is the vaccination rules. I think.
Right. All right.
Emergency use authorization.
Charles Held said, question, any more clues about whether or not October 7th was an orchestrated false flag? I can let George answer this first, and then I can tell you what I think.
Put it this way, I don't think somebody picked up the phone and said, okay, Hamas, start flying. I think that what happened was they give money through the Iran nuclear deal to Hezbollah, al-Attar, and we said this 7 years ago, and then they give money to Hamas, and then they bring in all these radical mullahs, and they start telling kids that they should die for Allah, and then you're going to have something like this eventually happen. So, the strategy of tension that Kissinger used and Dulles used and all these people used did it for a good reason. It means you're buying weapons all the time. Strategy of tension, even when there's no war, it means you're buying weapons and cashing weapons covertly all the time. So that's what they did. There was a strategy of tension in the Gaza, and eventually they're going to use the weapons. So that's my.
All right. So my original answer to this was going to be don't know, don't care. If it looks like a duck, smells like a duck, and walks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay. But I also tweeted this out a few days ago, and this is from the end of Douglas Reed's book. By the way, I dedicated my book to Douglas Reed. And this is a quote from the book. Thus, at the end of 1955, a presidential election year again impended in circumstances which the dominant power in America had always found ideal: an ailing president, party politicians avid for the Jewish vote, a war situation in the Middle East and another in Europe. In such a state of affairs, domestic political pressure in the capital of the world's wealthiest and best armed country might produce almost any result. Against this background of pressure on an alien president through the party managers and of one more campaign about, quote, the persecution of the Jews, back to George's comment about anti-Semitism, symbolized this time by Israel, the year of the presidential election began. From the start, experienced observers saw that the basis of all calculations was domestic political pressure, which could be exercised on the American government and its acts. So if you go and you take a look at Reed's book and you read the chapter, it's close to the end on how American elections are rigged. and I'm not talking about stealing votes. I'm talking about funneling money and voting blocks in order to control the balance of power in a democracy, then you'll see that something like this has happened with Israel at least three times before in the American election cycle, which is curious. And they all seem to have a very similar pattern. And so to me, George Webb's mantra is look at the metadata. If you look at the metadata and you see, oh, it looks like Israel always has a war in October of the year before a presidential election, and you see that that's happened three times before, then it's things that make you go, and then you got to go look at that. So
that's analysis. And blocks, voting blocks, like you say, the Jewish vote can always come in at the end, and the first Rebbe says, or second or eighth Rebbe, whatever Rebbe we're on. And the same thing for the Pope with the Catholic vote. It can come in right at the end and go. And Kissinger used to play that kingmaker role when he sat with Trump. He said it's okay to vote for Trump in 2016. Billy Graham for the Evangelists played that role. So, and you only need to apply the pressure at very critical times when people are running out of money and they're going to drop out of the campaign. It's like a week period of time right now before the third or fourth debate that they're saying, I'm out if I don't have a good showing this next.
Yeah. So Douglas Reed was a foreign correspondent for the London Times. So he was in Europe in the 1930s writing for the Times of London. And he said even back then, what the politicians in Europe knew is that you can't make a deal with a politician in the United States within 18 months of an election. That their word is worthless within 18 months of an election, because they're so being manipulated by the electoral process in and of itself. Which was an argument I think that Alexander Hamilton made when they were putting the whole thing together. Last thing Ecomradoc said to you is it's suspending the responsibility to give patients their medical records, their ability to have visitors, and rules on seclusion and restraints. I don't know what this means, but I guess it's something that she was talking to you about.
I think she means the sequestering of someone that they feel is sick or whatever and contagious, maybe. Restraints sound like you're belting someone down,
Right.
So yeah, that's not good. That's turning the doctor calls while you're waiting in the waiting room, and then here come the orderlies. That's not good.
Indeed. All right, George. Well, it's been great. It's Thursday, which means that I will see you again on Sunday. People, if you want to take care of us, if you want to keep content like this on the internet, then you can go to georgewebb.substack.com and George provide George with the means to continue his. I should learn how to talk.
No, I thank you, Peter. And my thing is talking to people who actually got shots in the arm, and just say, what's happening to you? I want to hear it from somebody directly. And then why is Malone your hero? He's the one who worked on shots that went in your arm. So I don't get it. How is that guy your hero? And I want to understand this. I don't understand how anybody could make that person. It's like the Kissinger Peace Prize. How could they ever give him a peace prize?
Right. Well, it's because prizes are all marketing. They're all marketing. They're not really about merit. They're not. They're not really about promotion. Yeah, it's just going to make you money. So if you want to take care of George, go to georgewebb.substack.com and become a subscriber to George's Substack, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/GeorgeWebb1, no E. It's immediately below George's smiling face there. You can go there. There's an address in the middle of the screen on the bottom there, and it says P.O. Box Business Suite Supercenter, 1227 North Peachtree Parkway, Box 189, Peachtree City, Georgia, 30269. You can send George stuff there, but no anthrax. No anthrax.
Books are always appreciated, by the way.
Yep.
I've never got a book that I haven't ripped apart, figuratively, and looked in the index and done an analysis of. So if you want to send books, send books.
Indeed, indeed. And if you want to take care of the Duke Report, and there have been a lot of people, thank you very much. We've got quite a few new members, and the support has been rolling in. I think that my actually delivering on a book probably has something to do with it. You can support the Duke Report by going to buymeacoffee.com/the Duke Report. Or Christmas is coming. You can go to thedukereport.com/shop, and you can buy an edgy t-shirt for that annoying cousin that you've got that is always saying something that might bother you. You can give him a shirt and let him know what you think. You could give them a Quigley and Sutton University t-shirt, and they would look like the smartest person on the block.
Might have never went to college, and then.
And George, if somebody wants to send you a shirt, what size do you wear?
3X.
3X.
Yeah.
So buy George a shirt and send it to the PO box. And at 3X. Yeah. There we go.
Right,
all right. So I'll see you on Sunday, George.
Sunday. Thanks a lot.
Sunday. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.